everyone, and welcome to another episode of Hangin at the Reef. Today, we're diving into the exciting world of HPU's Study Abroad program and the incredible opportunities it offers. Joining us are some fantastic guests. Melissa Matsubara, the Director of Study Abroad and International Exchange Programs here at HPU, and two inspiring students who have made the most of their study abroad experiences. Melissa has a master's degree in intercultural relations with a focus on developing and advising study abroad programs. Before returning to her roots in Hawaii, she worked as a study abroad advisor at Brandeis University, where she set up medical service internships in Chile, taught English in Turkey, and studied in Japan. She's also taken groups of students to Italy and has lived and worked in various countries, including Australia. We'll also hear from our student guests. First up, Saadiya Patrick, a senior from Georgia and Arizona. She's double majoring in TESOL and Arts and Markets and spent an entire year studying abroad in South Korea. Next, we have McKenzy Moore from California, a senior business major who studied and interned in Italy for a year. Together, we'll explore their experiences and the transformative benefits of study abroad and how immersing oneself in different cultures can enhance personal and professional growth. So let's get started and discover how you can make the most of your educational journey. Well, welcome to Hangin at the Reef. Today we've got Melissa Matsubara and Saadiya Patrick and McKenzy Moore joining us. Well, first, guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Well, we're glad you're here. So, the first question, I just want to kind of start with the big picture. So, we as college administrators or professors, or even you guys as students, sometimes take for granted that everybody out there understands, what types of programs or experiences are offered at traditional universities like HPU. We have many colleges across the country, for example, that have first-generation students or families that haven't gone through the experience of putting a child maybe through college. So even things like study abroad might be foreign to them. So I thought it would help for our listeners that aren't maybe familiar at all with study abroad or just kind of know, well, I know it's studying somewhere else for a period of time, for us to really explain to them, what is a study abroad program at a university? And then just as important, why is it such an invaluable part of a college experience? So let me open with that and maybe throw it to you, Melissa.
Yeah, so this means I get to help students study or do an internship in different countries for a semester, year, or summer to fill their degree requirements and still pay about the same as they would for tuition and living expenses here in Hawaii, but grow and gain skills that allow them to become successful in life. Because when you're navigating another country, experiencing other cultures, and pushed out of your comfort zone, you're not only learning about the country you're in, but you also learn a great deal about yourself, what you're passionate about, truly capable of, even the kind of difference that you want to make in the world. And so I love my job. I love being able to connect students with these types of opportunities.
Yeah, I think, we had chatted when we were talking about study abroad and getting prepared for the podcast, Melissa, about when a student comes from maybe an environment that doesn't have as much exposure to people from other parts of the world or even other communities within their own state or locality, that stepping into a study abroad program can be that pivotal point where they really start to learn, other people's points of view, perspectives, cultural differences, and those things become invaluable for a young person to learn at an early age because it really sets the tone for their openness and, in some cases, ability to assimilate with other groups and other, cultures and other types of people that haven't grown up in the same environment. So, maybe asking Saadiya and McKenzy, what was your experience like as even a younger person, and did study abroad open up those experiences for you?
So I grew up in a very small town in Arizona. It was a predominantly white area. I was one of the very few people of color all the way up until I graduated. And I lived in a small town that people didn't really leave. So most people that I went to high school with all stayed in state, and maybe the furthest they went was California. So I was actually the only person from my high school to go to Hawaii, and my graduating class was over 700 people. So I I was one of the people that was always like, I want to travel. I want to go abroad. I want to like live abroad. I want to do something outside of the country because I grew up in this small town that like no one ever leaves. Like the furthest they'll go is like California or Mexico, and that's only because that's, the closest option. So I think just coming to Hawaii was already such a big jump for me. And then once I found out that HPU had such a great like study abroad program, I was immediately interested, especially because when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do after graduation, I was like, I want to do something where I can travel a lot. So I kind of came across the whole teaching English in other countries because that's one of the best and maybe the easiest ways to kind of go to multiple different countries. And once I found out HPU had like a major for teaching English, I was like, sign me up. And then, when my department heads were talking about how a lot of people who do my major study abroad, I was like, okay, well, that seems like the next step for me. So I think my first semester at HPU, I immediately emailed study abroad and said, I don't know how soon I can go abroad. I don't know where I want to go, but I want to study abroad. And then I started meeting with Melissa and making appointments and just like going through that process to figure out how and where and when I was going to study abroad.
Wow. So Saadiya, you recognize the value of the experience and the perspective, the broadened perspective it would give you right out of the gate. McKenzy, what about your experience? How familiar were you with study abroad coming in? And, give us a little sense of your background and how the experience may have already started to shape your perspective.
Definitely. I think it's interesting. I kind of have a similar situation. I'm from a smaller town in a coastal Southern California area. Lots of us go elsewhere across the United States for college, and study abroad wasn't a completely foreign idea to me because, when you're in college, you see the people above you doing what they're going to do. And a majority of the time I was seeing people have those experiences. But I never really thought that it was maybe going to be for me at the time. I think I just hadn't put enough thought or energy into that idea. But basically, at the point that I was at during midway through sophomore year, I was definitely having a lull in my education with sort of a lack of passion and motivation, and just kind of was hoping for something more or something maybe even different than what I was currently experiencing. And so I decided to make some pretty big adjustments and some changes, and immediately reached out to Melissa to find out more information on potentially going abroad and what that would look like. And definitely had an idea of a couple different locations that I was thinking about potentially moving to, and ended up with going to Italy and had the most amazing time and stayed for 2 semesters. And I think it's interesting because I always say to anyone when I'm like talking to them about their, if they have that same feeling or inkling of going, and there's a reason why people always say that study abroad changes your life, and that there is such a cliche to that whole idea of like being the person that won't stop talking about it. But I mean, it's true. It completely changes your life, your experiences, and your perspective. And I think that it's important that, how familiar you are with it or not doesn't matter. But what truly matters is if you have the desire to go, that you act on that so that you don't, look back in 10 years and say, I wish that I had had that experience, when it really is accessible to students these days.
Yeah, I think all four of us are in complete agreement that it can be, a pivotal point in your life in terms of giving you a perspective that you just weren't able to have growing up, maybe in a sheltered community in some cases, or an environment where you just weren't able to travel or to be exposed to other people. I know in my situation, I went to college in New York City, which I came from a fairly sheltered, upper middle class suburban neighborhood in upstate New York, but didn't have a lot of exposure to people from certainly other parts of the world, but even people from other parts of the country. When I think back about things that truly changed my life and made me a different person, it was that exposure to people from different backgrounds. And I got that just by being in a place like New York, where there, people from all over the world there naturally. But a lot of students are going to school and colleges that are in little towns or places that just don't have that diversity. So this is a fantastic way to expand upon that experience of maturing from a high school student to a college student to a young adult and gaining that perspective, which I think becomes invaluable throughout your entire life. So let's bring it back, Melissa, to the study abroad program here at HPU. I think I was reading just the plethora of options that students have to choose from. Did I see something like over 350 different program options in 65 different countries?
Yeah, exactly.
So how that can be overwhelming, I imagine,
Yes.
and students that are just learning about study abroad are thinking, my God, how can I choose where to go? And there's so many places that I want to go. So when you're faced with that question from a student that says, how do I get started and how do I start thinking about the place that's right for me and will provide the kind of experience at this point in my life that I'm interested in having, how do you start that conversation with a student?
No, for sure. I mean, I think, yes, as you mentioned, we have over 350 different options. There's a lot to choose from for sure. And this is extremely unique. Not a lot of other schools have this, but have such a diverse portfolio, but this has been very intentional. I feel extremely lucky that HPU is extremely supportive of study abroad and recognizes the value of these opportunities. So I have the luxury of being able to connect students with the best program option to meet their individual needs and interests. And so we kind of start with getting a better sense of what those goals and interests are, what kind of experience they want to have. And then I kind of walk them through all the different types, because what I think a lot of students don't realize is, aside from the different locations that they can choose, there's so many different experiences and types of opportunities that they can. So for example, we have students who they can study directly at a university. So maybe they're taking classes in English right alongside South African students, or maybe they want to take classes in English and the local language to improve their language proficiency and become more fluent. We also have field-based programs. So instead of being in a traditional classroom at a university type scenario, we have programs that are taking students throughout the country and getting an in-depth look at both the culture and the history of that country through some kind of a critical lens, whether it's climate change or urban development, things of that nature. We had a student who studied post-genocide restoration in Rwanda, students studying diplomacy in Jordan and Switzerland. We also have internship opportunities, which McKenzy did. And so they're able to gain professional development type experiences and career ready skills. So we've had pre-med, nursing, public health majors do hospital rotations in Sevilla, Spain. We've literally had students talk about like scrubbing into surgeries and having these kinds of opportunities that they wouldn't necessarily here in the US or even at college. And all of our business majors, as you know, HPU is very focused on hands-on practical application for everything that they're learning instead of more theory-based learning. So all of our business majors, for example, are required to do an internship. And studying abroad is a perfect way to fulfill this requirement. There's so many internships that are already set up. You don't have to find a company, you don't have to figure out what you're going to do. And so a lot of our students have actually had job opportunities offered after they've done an internship, because you can study abroad in your last semester. So it's worked out well for them. But we also have like semester at sea where they're studying in like 16 different countries in a single semester, or Sea Education Association, where they're on this research vessel sailing from maybe Fiji to Tahiti and throughout the Caribbean. And then their cultural immersion experience is the ocean. So they're learning about star navigation, maritime studies, they're doing water samples in the middle of the night. So many different opportunities. I mean, we even have our short-term faculty-led programs where our students can take advantage of the breadth and wealth of information that our faculty come with. So we've had environmental studies professors take students to the Galapagos to study that diversity of flora fauna there. So yeah, so having them understand kind of all the different types of experiences that they can choose from, figuring out what their goals, interests, kind of experience they're looking for, and then I'll send them a few recommendations and we kind of go through it together. So I'm with them every step of the way in that regard.
You're talking about experiential learning opportunities, which is, back when I went to college, for example, you sat generally in a classroom in a passive lecture and listened to somebody kind of talk to you about a concept. And today in education, it's experiential learning is such a more powerful and dynamic way to learn. And it's really great to know that the study abroad program, continues that that trend of creating those experiential learning opportunities that are immersive in environments that can just take your knowledge and level and ability to learn to a whole nother level. Let me ask Saadiya and McKenzy, did you guys have a good idea when you, engaged with Melissa in the study abroad program on, what you wanted that experience or that program to be, or was it a hard process for you to sort of narrow it down to the interest that you thought was most suited to your desire? And maybe, McKenzy, we could ask you to go first.
Definitely. I think when I look back on that time period, I walked in to have this meeting with Melissa and probably was a wreck of, I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't know what I'm doing. But I know that I need something that's gonna, change my life, basically. I'm a general business major right now, and with like kind of a emphasis and a passion for marketing. So I knew that I wanted to do something that would meet some of those needs and requirements for my degree, while at the same time having, as we were talking about, that practical experience in an international culture. So once I did decide to go to Italy, which was kind of, tapping in the back of my head, like, what if you did that and went to Florence and had that experience? Everything kind of just seamlessly worked out and just seemed to be fit right into place. When I was looking at the different courses offered by the program that I went abroad with, which is AIFS, they, showed me a very extensive amount of classes that were marketing based or business, focused. Taking classes like marketing today's fashion or marketing wine, and then even taking other elective courses that were just food culture and Italian culture and traditions. I mean, you get this practical experience that, some who don't have the experience would maybe say, how does that, give you any type of experience in real world or in, to help you with a degree that you're in school for or helping you further your education. But, the lessons that you're taking and the things that you're learning are something that you could never get by just listening to a lecture in a classroom, or the connections that you're making, the people that you're hearing from, and just the, uncomfortable situation that you're throwing yourself into. I mean, I think that in itself are lessons that people don't put themselves into, but should be every day in order to make themselves, further in their professional and personal journeys.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Saadiya, what about your experience? Did you come in with a strong, idea of where you wanted to go and what you wanted to study, or was that a process for you as well to kind of figure it out and get advice and consultation from Melissa in the study abroad office before you locked down on your study abroad destination?
I think I was definitely more decided on like the path I wanted to take. Like I said, like I'm a TESOL major, which is teaching English to speakers of other languages. So before I had gotten to college, I had watched a lot of different expats and a lot of different English teachers in other countries. And one of the biggest qualms, I guess, that people had with teaching abroad is a lot of people decided to do it, packed up their entire life, moved to another country, and within 2 weeks they realized that they hated it and wanted to leave because they just could not like grip with the fact that they're in another country. So I was already looking into some of the countries I was interested in living in. So I kind of already had things that I knew I wanted to accomplish in my time abroad. One, I wanted to see what it was going to be like to actually live in that country because I did not want to, one, get an entire degree, pay thousands of dollars for college, get there and then realize that I hate it and I just wasted all my money and time. But I also just wanted to see that what it was going to be like living in another country. Because like I said, I grew up in the same place pretty much my whole life. I'd never really traveled outside of Arizona. I never really lived, like coming to Hawaii was my first time really going abroad. So I wanted to see like, am I actually going to be able to live abroad and be okay with that and actually be able to like survive abroad. So that was one of my biggest reasons for wanting to study abroad. And then I knew for sure I wanted to take classes that would actually relate to my major. Because for me, I was one of the youngest people to like graduate high school. Me and my mom graduated around 16 or 17. So I was probably would have been like the youngest person to start my career. I would have like, I'm going to graduate when I'm 21 and then I would immediately become an English teacher. So I wanted to kind of keep the ball rolling and try and graduate on time or early. And so I was when I came into it, I had already looked through all of the programs. I was very proactive. I looked through all of the partner schools. I looked through all the exchange programs, and I went through and looked through all of the different universities that I was interested in and saw if they offered classes that I could take specifically for TESOL. So that's what kind of narrowed my decision down before I had met with Melissa, because I wanted to make sure that no matter where I was going, they were going to have enough classes for me. So I kind of narrowed it down to Japan or Korea. And then I ultimately decided on Korea because Japan doesn't really have as many course options for TESOL, but Korea had a ton. And there was multiple different universities that I could have picked from in Korea that had different TESOL courses. And they had a lot of like really interesting classes related to TESOL that they did not have here, probably because they're looking at teaching English through like a different lens. So that's kind of my process, but I definitely was more kind of decided on what and where I wanted to go by the time I decided to meet with Melissa.
Okay. You bring up an interesting, idea here, and that's the, what if, you don't like the environment or the culture that you choose to go study in? And, I guess this maybe is a question coming back to you, Melissa, is a commitment to study abroad, is it flexible in that it can be one semester? Does it have to be 2 semesters or a full academic year? But, do students get sort of locked in? And do you have some people that come back periodically and say, this just isn't right for me, or I'm not comfortable in the environment that I'm in? So what does that situation play out like?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, first of all, they can choose the duration that they're feeling ready for. So a lot of students, maybe they feel like it's easier to maybe just go for a shorter term. They're going to try it out for a summer program where it's like they're going to go with a group and everything's arranged and they don't have to figure too many things out. But even if a student is like, I want to go for a semester or a year, but they're feeling like, okay, this is not quite what I want to do, it is possible for them to return or whatever it may be. And I would work with them on that. But to be honest, I would say initially, almost a lot of students, many students initially contact me and feel kind of like that initial culture shock of like, I don't know, is it possible for me to return and they have a lot of concerns when they first get there, and that is completely natural. But, we kind of talk through things. Again, I'm there for them. They also have support networks on the ground, like resident directors and things in the country they're going to be in. And I would say 99.9% of the time, all of a sudden, I don't hear from them again. I see their Instagram posts during Instagram takeovers. They're having a wonderful, amazing time. They're fully adjusted. So it is scary. And there's those moments. But if they can work through that, then they definitely, it's extremely rare. It is for them to return home. But it is possible if it's not right for them or something's happening or whatever it may be, and they have to return home, then we'll work on figuring out how to still get them their credit. But initially, yes, it's very common that they wanted to return home, and then they're fine.
Yeah, and I think as a parent, I would say best advice, because I do have one of my 4 children. My oldest daughter is doing basically a study abroad year in Taipei. I think when she first got there, in the first few days that I would talk to her, she was, oh, I'm not so sure about this, Dad. And I think it all related to just being in a brand new environment, not with other kids that nobody else from her school went. So you don't have a support network there yet, don't have friends. And, I told her, just give it a couple of days. And as soon as you meet some other students and build some connections, you're going to feel completely different about the experience. And sure enough, within a few days, she went from, I'm not so sure about this, I'm a little homesick, maybe I made a bad decision, to I love this, and I just can't wait for the next experience. So, I think that's good advice for anybody that's stepping, especially younger people that, may still be learning the value of connections and networking and how to build those bases of friends. But that alone is an invaluable experience to gain, is, the process of making new friends and building that network in a new place. So let me come back with another question for you, Melissa. How long has the study abroad program, been running at HPU? And in your experience, how have you seen it change over the years? We mentioned earlier, using more experiential learning processes and experiences. So that's one change. But how else have you seen study abroad change over the years as, either a program here at HPU or industry-wide in higher education?
Sure. So I'm actually the first full-time dedicated position to education abroad here at HPU. So prior to me, HPU was sending students abroad. It was it was a faculty members like Dr. John Davidan who were assisting students in studying abroad in addition to their full course teaching load. And so from that time in 2012 until now, we've been able to expand the options. So we went from maybe 40 exchange partner schools in 20 countries to the diverse and extensive portfolio that we have today. And what I really was looking for are, again, these types of experiences because our students have such unique and individual needs, interests, goals, and what they want to get out of it. And so I didn't feel that we were serving them in the best way that we could with our limited options. But I knew of other programs that existed and experiences because my background, actually, my master's degree is specifically in intercultural relations with a focus on study abroad advising and program development. And so I was working at a study abroad office at Brandeis University prior to moving back home in Hawaii. So I knew what was out there, and this is what I really wanted to bring home to Hawaii. And so since then, we've been able to expand. And again, I was very grateful that HPU was supportive of this. And so now there's a lot of different kinds of opportunities depending on what a student is interested in, and also for their major, whether it's something, sometimes you might think that studying abroad could delay your expected date to graduate if you are pre-med or engineering or nursing or social work. But no, we actually have programs that can they could take classes specifically for their major, maybe even help them graduate faster and quicker. So I think that's where we're going in terms of the diversity of options and opportunities, depending on the time frame or the student situation or what they're interested in. And that's how we've changed over the years.
You mentioned earlier, all the different programs that are available, different configurations. Do you have to think of it though as, I'm studying in one academic environment in one country, or do some of these programs even cut across different countries and allow you to study things like cross-border issues and food security, as an example, things like that?
Yeah, definitely. So we do have a program, it's a field-based program, and you're looking exactly food security. So you're learning about maybe 3 or 4 different countries in the context of food security. How does Jordan, how does Vietnam, how does South Africa, what is their approach to food security or access to health or climate change? What are they doing? And then the student gets to learn about that country through that specific lens and critical issue, and it gives them kind of an entryway point to dig deeper. So yes, they don't so sometimes they're not in a single location at a university for the full year. And as I mentioned, there's other options where they're studying abroad in multiple countries in a single semester. Or if a student wants to study abroad in 2 different places for the year, maybe one semester they're in one country, and then the next semester they're in a different country. Or like what McKenzy did, she studied abroad in Florence. She still wanted to continue in Italy, but then she did an internship for her second semester.
So it really sounds like, for students that are interested in study abroad, you have to approach it with a very open, broad mindset and think, I'm not just selecting one focus academically in one country or one university, but really building a program that's multifaceted that supports their academic pursuit, and can set the stage for learning about an issue in a much, much broader sense, whether it's an issue specific to that particular environment or countries in a region. That just seems like just an amazing learning opportunity at such a pivotal point in a student's academic career. Let me come back to Saadiya and McKenzy. When you guys think about your experiences, can you think of one situation, one opportunity, one environment, one thing that really stood out to you as just an amazing experience to have gone through, and something that you can already see how it's starting to shape your academic career or your professional pursuits as you move on to your next stage? So Saadiya, let me ask you first.
So at Konkuk University, they have a club called the International Friends Club. And I very quickly realized after talking to some of the other exchange students at other Korean universities that club is unique to Konkuk University. And it is basically this club where they take over 300 students that are a mix of international and Korean students. And every Wednesday we have a meeting and we talk about different activities we plan to do for the weekend. And then after our meeting, we always go out and have dinner. And especially like the drinking culture and the eating culture in Korea is very big. And that's how you kind of make connections and meet people. So every Wednesday after the meeting, we would go and eat dinner and kind of hang out and chat and like meet different people. And then of course, over the weekend, we would all do like an activity together, whether it was going to Gyeongbok Palace and putting on hanboks and going on the tour, or going to the Blue House, or doing a hike up like Achesan Mountain. And so going through that club was very, very helpful because I wanted to make friends from many, many different countries. And I think that had I not been in that club, it would have been very, very difficult. And I met some people through that club that I still talk to this day. They're some of my best friends that I'm actually planning on going to see very, very soon. And I was able to learn about different like job opportunities and things like that that I didn't even consider were an option. So my major is around TESOL, but I think that I have a bigger passion for like linguistics and just the concept of language learning in general. And so one of the things in joining that club and going to Korea helped me realize is that I want to help change the way that they teach English rather than just teaching English, because I was able to talk to so many different people who English wasn't their first language and they learned. And I saw so many different things about the way that they were taught English that just made me so upset, because I'm like, it could have been so much easier for you. It could have been more enjoyable for you. And I've had, some Korean friends who studied English for 12 years and they still aren't fluent. They still can't speak English. And so I didn't even realize that I could get a job at, a company that makes these resources, or I could get a job working with the people who develop the English tests and kind of work on developing and refining and updating those materials, because I've had so many people now who will reach out to me and say, hey, like I'm studying for English, or hey, I'm teaching English and this is what it says in the textbook. What do you think? Does this sound natural? Does this sound right? And then I'm able to kind of help them in a way that the resources that they're currently being provided does not help them. So it was just such a unbelievably like valuable experience to go through that club and to meet those people and to have those experiences, because it really helped me truly figure out like what I'm passionate about and what I really want to do and how I want to kind of help people post graduation, which was something that I definitely did not know before I left. I honestly thought that I wanted to be an English teacher for the rest of my life, and I realized I don't, but I do want to do something in relation to language and linguistics and in teaching. So it was very, very important for me to have that experience and kind of realize like I'm more passionate about this specific section of like language teaching. And I think that just that club in general was such a valuable experience that it made me feel so much more happy about the fact that I chose to go to Konkuk University, because once I realized that it was such a unique experience that I wouldn't have been able to have at any other university in Korea, it really was like, it put it into perspective, like, wow, I made the right choice. And I'm very, very happy in the choice that I made.
Was it hard for you in those first days, to figure out how to connect with people, or were you comfortable from day one? You're never one of those people who can just go meet people anywhere and build a network quickly, or was that a challenge for you?
So I'm actually very, very introverted. I struggle a lot with going out of my way to talk to people. So I was very, very scared about moving to Korea. My situation was a little different though, because at HPU, before I studied abroad, I was an international mentor. So students who came to HPU to study abroad here in Hawaii, I got paired with one or two students each semester, and I was able to build friendships with them. And the first semester that I was the international mentor, I actually was mentoring Korean students who lived in Korea, and I became pretty good friends with them. So by the time that I had went to Korea, I already knew people that lived there. And my friend from high school, she was studying abroad in Korea as well, at a different university, and we lived in the same building. So when I got to Korea, my situation was a little bit easier to kind of ease my way into making friends, because even if I didn't make any friends at school, I still had the friends that I made through being an international mentor, as well as my friend from high school who was studying abroad. But pretty quickly after I got there, my university was really good about having events for international students to meet with each other and connect. So during the orientation, we got paired up and like did activities with our orientation groups. And so you end up meeting a lot of people that way. And pretty soon after the semester starts, they start doing like the club fair. And then I was scouted by the IF club and they were saying like, hey, like you should join, you should check it out. And I was like, okay, I'll see. And then I was very nervous because I was there and I wasn't really talking to anyone. And my best friend, who's still, she's a Korean citizen and she's still there, she sat next to me and she saw that I wasn't talking to anyone. She sat next to me, started talking to me, and we've been friends ever since. And that was on, the very, very first meeting. So I definitely was not probably doing what I should have been to make friends, but being in an environment where people wanted to make friends with you and being in an environment where people wanted to meet other foreigners and other exchange students really helped. So I would say if you're someone who, like me, struggles to talk to new people or to get out there, I definitely recommend just maybe putting yourself in the environment so that other people can kind of approach you and talk to you.
But I would also say, yeah, like what Saadiya was describing, this is perfect. And she is kind of like a model student described. But the International Mentor Program, right? So we create these opportunities throughout. Once you're interested in studying abroad, I'm connecting you with networks and opportunities so that you can have the resources that Saadiya was able to take advantage of and build. So we have, with our exchange partner universities, we have these students from the schools that we work with here at HPU. So we reach out to students like Saadiya or McKenzy, and they can be international mentors. So then you're getting to meet a student from the school you're thinking, or the country you're thinking about sending abroad in, and you're building these relationships. And this is like the hope and the ideal of the program. And I love that it's coming to fruition in that way. And so even from there, you kind of, you're in that role. And then so it builds these, and building mutual understanding, you're helping that student who's coming to HPU and Hawaii and the US adjust. And then you kind of have developed that empathy for what it's going to be like when you're there. And then so you have the network there. And then for, as Saadiya mentioned, there will always be an on-site orientation for those students, or I should back up. So we also have pre-departure orientations for all students before they go abroad. So again, even if you didn't take advantage of being an international mentor, we're still going to connect you with students who studied abroad in the country, HPU students who studied abroad in the countries that you're thinking about, as well as our international students who are from the schools you're going to be going to. So before they leave campus, it's kind of more of a fun, kind of social. We have activities and food. And so Saadiya has been instrumental in helping with the pre-departure orientation. McKenzy is going to be helping us with the students who are going to be headed to Europe. So that's before they go. And then once they arrive, there's going to be an on-site orientation with the resident director and a whole slew of other students, US college students, who are in the same boat as them. They're scared. They're scared about being in a foreign country for the first time. They're scared about getting lost, so figuring out navigating a new transportation system, education system. But they learn the tools. They make friends during orientation, and then they have all of that support throughout the semester. So just to add,
sounds
like
like kind of a sink or swim situation for a lot, because everybody's in the same boat, so to speak, and needs to make friends and really grow their community within the program. McKenzy, what about you? What can you give us? What was one thing that stood out to you in your experience, and how that's maybe affected your perspective or your progression academically or professional desires?
Definitely. I think that, overwhelmingly, I would say it was just the decision to intern abroad and the overarching idea of making a commitment to actually work and gain experience in a completely different country was a big leap and a big jump for me because, already being a college student, you're sort of itching to get experience and get out there, in, your career path and in your career journey as a young professional. And so I think that, of course, like that decision and going into the office twice a week and, getting to work with other, coworkers from different countries as well. I was at I was doing marketing and event planning with a, really well-known company in the heart of Florence, but all my coworkers were from different countries. They weren't even Italian. So it was kind of, this hilarious mesh of a bunch of different cultures, kind of combining into one. And, taking that going forward, I learned so much just in my day-to-day with them, as well as got to have these very personal connections because Italian culture and work culture is just so different than, American work culture. So, during the week, it would be like, okay, well, let's go and get lunch. And, here's pasta and wine. And let's talk about our lives that we know, so personally about each other because we're like a family here, and I've been working there for a month, right? But they already know so much about me and I already know so much about their families and and then let's go back to the office right after and go about our normal work schedule and our normal work day. And then a single moment, I would say, it was at the very end, I actually had to present about my internship experience to the other intern students as well as our resident director and then a couple of our professors. And that moment for me was really kind of full circle and sort of insane in a way because I, similar to Saadiya, I find myself as sort of an introverted person. I used to describe myself as extremely shy and hard to kind of get out there and meet people. And I almost had this realization right before I left to go abroad. And it was like, you're going to have to maybe change this a little bit, in order to do well. You're going by yourself abroad. And as soon as I got there, it was almost like this completely different personality showed up out of nowhere after the last 20 years of thinking I was an introvert and a shy person. And, one of those last moments of being in Italy and being at my school, I, got up in front of all these people and, publicly spoke, which, don't even try to ask me to have done that 2 years ago because it would have been a, complete anxiety attack. And yet here I am presenting this presentation where it is just flowing so seamlessly because, it was so passionate and so personal and such a, unique experience to me and no one else had the same internship experience, because everyone was doing different things. And I got to just get up there and like it was a rush of complete adrenaline and like excitement because I kind of ended my day and I was like, a year ago, me would not believe that I just did that I just spoke like that I just presented myself in that way, that I have the experience under my belt now, just international experience, but experience honestly at all at this point in my, college journey. So I think that like, specifically that was a very pivotal moment for me, as well as just the entire experience as a whole just completely has transformed who I am as a person and who I try to be, every day going forward.
I love that. I would love to piggyback on that and turn it and wrap around back to the benefit. So as you're hearing what the growth that Saadiya and McKenzy are describing, I feel that students gain such a comprehensive set of life skills and competencies because when you're pushed out of your comfort zone and you're forced to navigate another country, different societal norms, culture, language, you learn what you're made out of. You learn how to be an effective problem solver. You learn how to be flexible and adaptable in negotiating unexpected situation, but also like how to hold your composure in stressful situations when the sky is falling. You develop cross-cultural communication skills so you can work effectively with people from all different backgrounds. So even if a student has no intention of working internationally, we're all going to have to work with people that we don't always see eye to eye with. I mean, look at our country right now and the political system. And then also what I love hearing from McKenzy and Saadiya is that you also gain this strong sense of self-confidence and self-reliance in realizing what you're capable of. And so it helps students realize how interconnected the world is, what they're passionate about, what the kind of difference they want to make in the world, and what students have discovered what they want to do with their life. And in the process, they're gaining the skills and the network to make it happen. I mean, the way that Saadiya and McKenzy are talking about it, Saadiya realized a career path she didn't even know existed. That was an opportunity. Or these skills that McKenzy realized that was in herself all along, but being pushed and challenged in that way. Yes, it can be a sink or swim situation, but students always find a way. They figure out a way to come out on top. And I can see that physical chronicled that difference. Every single year, this transformation that students go through, sometimes they physically look different when they come back on campus. So I've seen it in such big and small ways, and I still have alumni who write to me and talk about how they still draw from the impact of their study abroad experience and how it's helping them navigate this career move and move to a different city and a new job and this and that. And so all kinds of ways for sure. And I don't think that I'm alone in recognizing this. I was reading statistics about how studying abroad and employers from every single different industry recognize the skill set and the value that students gain from pushing themselves and living and navigating another country. And so on average, it's something like 90% of students who study abroad are able to find employment within their career field within 1 year of graduating, opposed to 49%. And on average, they're earning higher salaries as well, because there's so much that it's going to allow you to be successful from these experiences.
Yeah, so much in life is predicated on, an ability to collaborate with people, and that requires, an ability to understand different perspectives and different points of view. And, this is just such a foundational part of gaining that skill set. And, whether you're stepping into it with a little bit of trepidation or you're, ready to go, it sounds like it's a transformative experience for everybody that comes, into a study abroad program, and they walk away with just a better understanding of how to be successful and how to relate to people with different points of view. And it must be so rewarding, Melissa, for you to see these success stories year after year, and students that have gotten this great foundational skill and then gone off and been much more successful professionally, or just, better human beings in their ability to, understand and appreciate that everybody comes from a different life experience, and how to relate to folks that don't have the same experience that you've had. I want to thank you all for hanging at the Reef with me here this afternoon. Melissa, Saadiya, and McKenzy, it sounds like you guys have all been touched in really profound ways by the study abroad experience. And Melissa, my last question comes back to you. For folks that are interested in learning more about study abroad, whether they're a student at HPU or a parent maybe who's thinking about this for their child at HPU or another school, how can they learn more about study abroad and get in touch with the office here?
Sure. I mean, one great, fun, flashy way is definitely follow us on Instagram. It's study abroad HPU. Hashtag study abroad HPU. And then it's study abroad HPU. And basically, our students have been doing a killer job. So our sharks all over the world are doing Instagram takeovers. Saadiya did one, McKenzy did one. We're going to have more throughout the year and the semester. So it's a great way for anyone to get a glimpse of what a study abroad experience has been like for our students. So that's really fun. Our website is www.hpu/studyabroad. You can email us, studyabroad@hpu.edu, or again, my name is Melissa Matsubara. One thing we didn't get to touch on, and I really want to emphasize though, is that there is a lot of funding out there specifically for studying abroad, and making these types of opportunities accessible and possible for students at HPU is something that is very, very near and dear to my heart. And so I specifically wanted to come back to Hawaii, work at a minority serving institute, and help the students that we serve have these access to these types of opportunities. So I don't want your listeners thinking like this is some lofty experience that's only for students that have money or have traveled before or have, just spend their summers in Europe. This is something that I think is for every single type of student. So we're constantly trying to look for ways to provide funding and resources to help students take advantage of these types of opportunities. One example is that in the last 5 years, we were able to receive about 3 different grants from the Japanese government to send 23 students to Japan over spring break with all expenses covered. So that's nearly 70 HPU students that we're able to send to Japan with all expenses covered. And then we have scholarships specifically for nursing students. We have the Angela Costanza Memorial Scholarship for marine bio students. There's millions of dollars, literally millions of dollars in scholarships and funding specifically for studying abroad that students are not applying for. And so that's something that I love being able to connect students with. And for your listeners out there, if they want to help create these opportunities possible, They can always donate to the HPU Study Abroad Scholarship as well. But yes, there's a lot of funding for sure. So that's one thing that I always want to make sure that students and families know, is that there's a lot of support to help them through the process and a lot of funding to make it possible for sure.
Okay, so good to know. So if you're concerned about how you're going to fund a study abroad experience, don't be discouraged. Get in touch with your office, and you can explore options to help connect them with funding resources that can make this transformative experience possible. And then the other thing, just to reinforce, is you called out for folks that want to follow stories or learn about some of these invaluable experiences, they can follow the Study Abroad program on Instagram at #StudyAbroadHPU to learn a little bit more. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. I want to thank you guys for your time today, and just say I hope everybody out there listening comes away with a new appreciation for what an impact study abroad can have on your life. So thanks everybody for hanging at the Reef with me today, and we will be back with a new episode shortly.
Thanks,
Thank
Jeff.
you so much.
Thank you.